your personal brand is your personal brand. No employer owns it. No human owns it. It is your brand, whether you work for yourself or you work for General Motors or the spaceship. It doesn't matter. It's your personal brand. And so how you show up every day, how you talk to people every day, LinkedIn, are you active or not? It's your brand, and you should really own that brand and make sure that you're active.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. And today we have a remarkable guest with us. Christy Honeycutt is a human-centric talent acquisition executive with over 20 years of experience in her field. She's known for her expertise in recruitment process outsourcing and has made a significant impact on the hiring practices of countless organizations. Christy is a dedicated advocate for empathy in the workplace. And that is the exact conversation that we are going to have here today, how empathy impacts the workplace. Christy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Yeah, this is my first podcast of 2024, so we can set the bar high.
Let's break it in. I like it.
To me, I think the word empathy is overused. It's thrown out there like one of those bingo cards in the office. You know, do you have empathy? I have empathy. We all have empathy. To me, the reality is, and I want to see if you agree with this, that empathy begins within. Empathy begins by understanding yourself as a human being, understanding what triggers you, understanding why you behave and respond and react in the ways that you do. And thereby, by having that understanding, you're able to see how other people may be triggered, how other people may be responding, how other people may be hurt by things that you say when it's not your intention. When you understand how you react to things, you're better able to understand how others react to different things. And to me, in order to genuinely have empathy, you can't have it until you've accomplished that piece first. How do you feel about that?
I couldn't agree with you more. I was raised around some really wonderful individuals, and I used to hear this phrase a lot, which I'm sure you've heard. Well, but you know what I meant, or my heart was in the right place. And I think that too often we navigate from that place versus doing the work and understanding ourselves in order to have space for other people. So I couldn't agree with you more.
And one of the things you said in your video is it's about how we show up and doing a scan of yourself to understand, which kind of coincides with what I'm saying. I think we're on the same page there with empathy. But I think a lot of leaders miss the point. I think they feel that I can understand a little bit about what you're going through, therefore I'm empathetic. I can walk in your shoes, therefore I'm empathetic. And I think I kind of have this on steroids a little bit because I spent the last year writing a book. And while empathy was not like the primary focus of why I began the book, it came clear to me as I wrote the book. The book is called Dark Drivers, and it's about childhood memories and traumas and hidden things that are in the recesses of our mind that are actually impacting how we behave today. And as I interviewed people for this book, I learned that once they uncovered that for themselves, they can look at someone else differently now. And they're going, oh, you know what? I bet that person has some dark drivers going on. I'll bet that maybe when I saw them, and you mentioned this as well, the body language, right? Mm-hmm. That maybe they tensed up because I smacked an emotional sunburn, and only until they've uncovered their own could they really tap into that. I can watch your body language, but what am I watching for? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So a couple of things that you said when you were saying that is I think of shadow, because we all show up, right? So we all have biases, both seen and unseen. We have shadows that either we have, childhood traumas that we've either dealt with or haven't, and it shows up in our personal life and also shows up in how we interact with other people. So a lot of what I was saying about scanning yourself, and I think I referenced the flat tire, maybe don't have that conversation that day, right? Just really kind of understand where you are, take time with yourself to make sure you're showing up authentically and present. I think, or I know rather, a lot of people are reacting from what they know, their state of being. So there was a situation with an employer couple of weeks ago. They had an employee that was looking for another job. It didn't come to them. It was a smaller organization. And I brought up the discussion around, do you think perhaps the person is fearful for their job? Because there was a lot of changes and this person had been with them for a really long time. And I said, maybe take a breath and take a beat and have a conversation, but also take a look at where your organization is today, all the changes that have happened, and then the actions of this individual. Give them an opportunity to have a conversation. And they did. And once they had that conversation, that person was retained and is a happy and healthy employee. But that individual was acting out of fear at that time. So I think that's a lot too of really that employer took a moment to take a beat to recognize the environment and the changes and how that impacted that individual, and had the opportunity with them to kind of talk and mesh it out so they could come to a really good ending together. But I think that traditional employers might have kind of got up in arms when they found out an employee was searching and maybe not had that conversation. And in this instance, it really is walking out and showing empathy towards another person to understand even further than what you think is in your visuals, if that makes sense what I just said.
I think that even goes a little deeper than that, because that employee may not even have realized they were responding out of fear. They might have been doing it kind of like driven by something, but they couldn't pinpoint it. And possibly once that employer took the time to have a conversation, it enlightened both sides of the equation. Maybe that employee said, oh, you know what, this is why I'm doing this. I kind of knew I needed to. I had this feeling, but I couldn't pinpoint it as being fear of losing my job.
Exactly.
Can you share with us a little bit about your own backstory and what led you to your career in talent acquisition?
I can. So I was a single mom new to the state of Texas, no family, and was working as a marketing rep for a large financial institution. I was traveling a lot. Being single mom and having two young boys that were very active in sports. And Cynthia, I'm proud to say I never missed a game. Don't know how that's possible, but I didn't. But there was a parent there, and he said, I always notice that you're always running from one place to another and you're a little all over the place. And have you thought about recruitment? I didn't even know what recruitment was outside of like sports recruitment, right? So he explained to me it was a little bit of finding the right person and an opportunity and matching the two. And that's something that I love to do and I do naturally anyway. And when I realized that was a career path, I just fell in love. And so I started my career with a company called Straight Source, which got bought out by Conexa, which got bought out by IBM. And I took it upon myself to create my own career path, kind of an upskilling myself before it was a thing. So once I would accomplish, a task or an achievement, I was hungry for more and I wanted to understand the other side of the coin. So being in operations, I wanted to understand sales. I wanted to understand implementation, and that hunger and that desire eventually got me to where I am today. So I've come up through the ranks from recruiting to doing management to doing talent management, upskilling, D&I, everything that comes to do with people is what I've learned over the years. But the great thing about it is acquiring that knowledge and learning that knowledge and getting to learn from some great leaders and from some not so great leaders, and just constantly scanning myself to see where I wanted to navigate to.
Was there a time in your career, and I don't know if I missed this as you were saying all of that, was there an HR stint in there? You worked in HR?
There was an HR stint in there. So talent acquisition and talent management is very closely married to HR at all times. So I've been in HR for 20 years. But to your point, actually managing HR, I did that for about 2 years. It was one of the most challenging roles I've ever had in my life. And what I learned is that HR is the unsung heroes. They have the heart of gold. They want to help everybody. But what I really quickly learned is that in HR, you can't please everyone. So you have to do what's best for the larger organization and then try to sprinkle in some of the fun things once in a while. But no matter what you do, you're not going to please everyone.
I think going kind of back to empathy and tying that to your career path, the reason I think HR people are really good when they go into leave HR and let's just go into talent acquisition and recruiting, it's because we're going to look at, and my background's in HR as well, right? So a lot of recruiters are out there and it's like, fill a spot. Let me get 8,000 resumes. Let me find, okay, this works. And it's like throwing numbers out there. Where in HR and having been on the inside of that organization, you know that it has to be a fit on both sides. So you're going to take that time to really interview that candidate differently, I think, than some other recruiters might, where they're just going to be like, oh yeah, they have check all the boxes. Where an HR person's going to say, well, maybe they don't check all the boxes, but I'll bet they have some experience here. Let me talk to them a little bit. And then you're going to dig deeper on that person. Are they going to last longer than 6 months? Are they really the right fit for that position? Do you agree with that?
Yes and no. So for me, and maybe I've just had the luck of working with some really good recruiters, but the only thing that I've had with some recruiters is I think when they're pressured by leadership to get numbers across the board, that's when you see quality start to dwindle a little bit. But I do think for the most part, if you've got a good recruiter, they're going to uncover that. I've seen it a little bit differently where recruiters are pushing people forward and having to fight for a diverse candidate or having to fight for somebody that is a little shy of the qualifications that don't exist in the market. But where I've seen it work really well is where talent and HR work together to service the operations and the management teams to help them kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel and the possibilities. And I think COVID rather, helped change a lot of people's thoughts about talent, especially during that time. And after that time, we've seen a lot of companies that either shifted down or shifted up. And now they're redirecting now that we've kind of come out of COVID and we're going into a soft recession. So I think it depends on the individual. I don't want to say all recruiters don't do a thorough job or all HR, does. But I think together, when they work together, it's magical. But I think you've uncovered something that I'm passionate about, which is there is a disconnect between HR and TA. And when they're rowing in the same direction together, they're stronger versus kind of well, I do this part for TA to attract them, and now HR is going to take it from here. So I think when you bring those teams together and they see the value that they have together as a holistic team and how that can impact your tenure and the development of your employees, that's when it really works. That's when the magic happens.
I think what I was alluding to more on the part that I don't feel works as well is just an outside talent acquisition organization that just has young recruiters who are just on a numbers. You just got to fill positions. You have to have your numbers up.
Mm-hmm.
And they really aren't like they're going to listen to HR. They're going to hear what you want. But I mean, I've worked with enough of them between, my career in HR and my husband's business and working with some of these outside recruiting firms. You can tell the ones that really listen and really want to fill the position with the right person and really want to partner with you, and the ones that are turn over their own people like crazy. And It's just numbers. And I think that's more what I was alluding to.
No, I can agree with you more. When it's numbers based and they're being pressured to get it over the line, you're going to see the diminished value of the candidate for sure. And it's less care because they know that they've got to hit a mark and a moment in time and the different things. So you're going to see that as well.
So what's the most interesting or the most memorable experience you've had during your career in this acquisition field?
Oh, goodness. There's been so many. A really fun story, this just came up this weekend, was, before all the focus on neurodiversity was a thing, I was solutioning it's a large aerospace manufacturing company that I managed globally. And we had a specific challenge with one part. We couldn't keep the employees. They just weren't engaged. It was a very repetitive task and it needed to be perfect. And so there was always errors. And we got involved with one of the manager's children was a neurodiverse child. We got involved with this community and we started hiring their students. And we saw zero error, but we saw just more purpose-driven, like the team came around them and they did such a great job. That was a lot of fun and meaningful. And now to see that kind of spreading outside of, that space and into other things, it's really exciting to see that. And it was fun to be a part of it.
As you take a deeper interest in your clients and in the positions that you fill, have you ever experienced, and I say this because I experienced once, or it was earlier in my HR career, and I was just internal HR. I wasn't acting as a recruiter, but we were filling a position. And I got this resume, and there were so many things on this resume that were blatantly just disqualifying. And it wasn't really necessarily skills or ability. It was other things on this resume, like an email address that said sexkitten101 at Hotmail. I mean, so So there are certain things that people do. And then so obviously this person was not someone we were considering. And I got an email from this person about 2 weeks after the position had been filled. And they said, could you give me some feedback? And so I did. And that person got so angry. I mean, they flipped out. And I'm like, well, first of all, you ask. And second of all, this is like professional feedback that you're getting. Like, take that as data and run with it. Has anything like that ever happened with you?
Yeah, you got me with the email. Yes, there was an individual. Oh, he was such a spot on everything that this client needed. And his email was chicken and something. It was quite interesting. I don't even want to say it. I'm so embarrassed, but it was bad. And I asked the individual, I said, do you have another email account that we might be able to reference? Because like you stated, everyone looks at the contact information. And he said, no, I don't see why this is a problem. So I have run into that. And I said, well, I don't feel comfortable submitting you to the client with these credentials. And, if you would consider changing that, I'm happy to move you forward. At that point, he also got offended that his email was a problem, was not self-aware, did not proceed. He withdrew. And I think, and good on you to give the feedback, because so many people are nervous now to give any feedback. They don't want lawsuits, or they don't want, to cause a problem. And I think that it's a little bit heartbreaking because there are people that need that feedback, but I don't think they're in a space to receive it.
I agree. And there's a couple, I think, mistakes that people make in their career that impact their next move. So one of those mistakes, other than using Sex Kitten 101, that's a blatant, obvious one. But some less obvious mistakes that I think candidates make is once they land in a role and they're happy, they completely get off social media. And then when I say social media, I'm referring to professional. I'm referring to LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So I've got this job. I'm good. I like it. And LinkedIn's there. And they're like, yeah, I know I should probably be a bit more active on there, but I'm not now. I don't have time. And they get in there and all of a sudden 1 year goes by, 2 years goes by. And then like year 3, they start to think, you know what? I think I need to make a move. I think I need to move up, and there's no opportunity for me here. I've gone as far as I can go. So what's next? And they're reaching out to me as, in career transition, and they're saying, where can I go? And I'm like, well, you have 312 connections on LinkedIn. You've been active a total of 1 time in the last 3 years. How do people know you, like you, trust you? This is your portfolio. I can't express to people how important that is.
I can agree with you more. I was actually on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. It's an early career podcast, and she asked a lot of really good questions. But the question she asked that resonated with me the most is, what advice would you give your younger self? So this is new college students like launching into the career path. I sat with it for a second and I said, the one thing that I could have learned that I've learned now at the end of my career is that your personal brand is your personal brand. No employer owns it. No human owns it. It is your brand, whether you work for yourself or you work for General Motors or the spaceship. It doesn't matter. It's your personal brand. And so how you show up every day, how you talk to people every day, to your point, LinkedIn, are you active or not? It's your brand, and you should really own that brand and make sure that you're active. The other thing that came to me was she'd asked another question about upskilling and keeping your skills sharp and things like that. And I do think LinkedIn is a great 2-minute read a day to catch up on your industry and what's going on, so you're relevant, so you can keep in line sight of what's coming up and maybe where you need to sharpen your tools or understand new laws and legislation that's coming out that impacts your role. So I couldn't agree with you more on that. The one thing I would say is you do max out at 30,000. I learned that early on in my career. What I used to tell my team was, every person that you connect with, that you talk to, is an important person. So when you're interviewing these people, make sure you're connecting with them on LinkedIn. Ask if they have referrals. And you're, in essence, building your trust and your brand with that group. It's absolutely critical. And you might be passing up on an opportunity that is just meant for you because you've been stagnant and happy where you are, which is great. But you want to make sure that you're staying out there and staying aware.
I think you hit on something else too that I want to bring up with you and maybe have a discussion, professional to professional. And you're right. We own our brand. So what we post in our social media is going to live on for a very, very long time. And I think it's important for individuals to understand and take that inner scan between what is a core value for me and what is a passion or an emotion that I'm feeling in the moment. Because especially in today's, in the divisiveness that's happening all around us, it's very easy to get caught up in a moment, get caught up in emotion and throw something back out there that really goes against your own personal core values. Maybe it's how you're treating someone. Maybe it's derogatory language you're using because you're angry in this moment. And I think if we're going to own our brand, we need to own who we want to be and how we want to show up all the time, because we change over the years, and how we feel really passionately about something right now, this moment, may change 5 years from now, but that post is still going to be there. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly about that. And I don't know if you've ever been on Facebook and tried to go delete something, but it's virtually impossible. So whatever you put out there is kind of stuck with you. There was an influencer. She's got a ton of tattoos, and she tattooed, I don't know if you saw it, Cynthia, but she tattooed her boyfriend's name on her forehead. It wasn't a real tattoo. It went viral. Everybody was, it created quite a bit of controversy. So what happened is she ended up taking it off. And she said the reason she did that is she wanted to show the younger generation that, although she loves and embraces her tattoos, is that something that you want to do so she opened it up just for that discussion topic. But I think that a lot of what we put out there in the moment, we're in the era of, I say this all the time, thank God I didn't have social media when I was a teenager. I don't know how they get away with anything. We track their phones. Everything is public. And so I do think you have to self-regulate and make sure that the message you're putting out in the moment, is it something that you want tied to your brand for the rest of your life?
I even used to tell my kids when they were younger and just starting their careers, the way that you would dress or the way that you'd go, like they'd be standing in a line at a grocery store. And I'm like, if you're wearing pajama bottoms and your slippers and you're looking, not that my kids did this frequently, but you just, how you're dressed, you don't know who's in front of you in that line. You don't know who's behind you in that line. So if you are serious about your career and your brand, you should always try to be, you don't always have to be like dressed to the nines, but you should be prepared to meet anyone and show up as your best self.
I agree. My grandma, back in the old school, but she used to say, always dress to the nines and be ready to meet whoever. No, I agree with you. There is a lot of that. I think the world's changing a little bit too with all the remote work and just even at the conferences and things I've been to lately. I think dress has been more relaxed, a little bit more free to express yourself, but you still don't want to cross. There's an edge, right? Like I remember 10 years ago, you wouldn't see me outside of heels and a suit. That was what was required. Right. That's how we dressed. Now you might see me and, I'm still dressed, but I'm not wearing the heels anymore. So I think there is a correlation to what they see and how people instantly, they're going to make a snap judgment, whether it's accurate or not. But what I do love and what I am seeing more of lately is the more senior leaders are kind of more approachable and more humanized lately. And I don't know if that's post George Floyd and all the things that we're navigating nowadays, but I think that's helping the younger generation kind of meet in the middle. And we're working in a time that's so multi-generational. So you've got all these different opinions and thought processes outside of our shadows and our biases. And so, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to be prepared to meet anybody. I was on a plane in Coach and met a chief diversity officer that I love his work and had no idea he was sitting right beside me. And we had the best conversation and now we're friends. So you do run into people and people that can impact your career and influence you, or maybe people that you admire that you don't realize are sitting next to you. So there's so much opportunity out there. It's just, you just got to be aware to embrace it.
Yeah, and I agree. Things are changing. I know with even myself, like early on when everyone was getting tattoos, I'm like, oh my God, my son got his first tattoo. I think I cried. I'm like, oh my gosh. But in my defense, the kid put lyrics to a Smashing Pumpkins song on his arm. And I'm like, what is this? And he's going, this is really deep. So now he's like 32 or something like that. And I'm going, how deep is it now? And he's just, shut up, Mom, just shut up. And it's just funny. You change and things that are important. But for me now, like seeing tattoos doesn't faze me and it doesn't. But years ago, even 15 years ago, when I was in HR, it would have been like, it would have been a status thing. I would have been like, we can't hire this person. And that just shows my age. But I also have kids who have changed that. And now I'm wearing Birkenstocks instead of heels. But, it just is what it is. We change and we grow, but we should always put our best self out there, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it doesn't have to be dressed in a, business suit, but it should be clean. Brush your hair, brush your teeth, be professional.
I completely agree.
So, what do you believe sets your company apart in the world of recruitment automation?
What I love about AppyHere, it's a recruitment automation company. A lot of people are doing recruitment automation. I think the difference that it comes down to is the people. So this technology was created by HR and talent acquisition professionals for HR and talent acquisition professionals. So not only, they're not just selling a software, they've created it for their problems. And our CEO used to be the general manager of Taleo. So very, very familiar that oil and water. So salary and hourly hiring is like oil and water. It just did not work. So what we do is we specialize in the hourly space. And the reason that I'm so passionate about it is it really gives the hourly worker a leg up. We're meeting them where they are. So it's an app-based platform and it allows them to go in. What we find is that they're more active at night and on the weekends. And then our app tracks and gives us so much insight, data insight. But the thing where I have the heart is I come from blue collar family, manufacturing, and it really, really meets them where they're at. They don't have to have a resume. They don't have to go fill out a 15-minute application and create a profile. And we see that most of our candidates are applying anywhere from 5 to 7 jobs at a time. And there's a 48-hour window, a moment of attention, and they've got a job somewhere else. So our technology allows you to kind of capture that moment of attention, humanize the experience for the candidate and the manager, and just eases the flow. So we're helping employers cut their time, their cost, and then we're seeing retention go through the roof. So it's working. They're getting the right candidates, the right schedule. So it's a true love match, which is at the heart of the end of the day where I started my career, where I'll probably end my career, is making sure that there's consistent love matches in the employment industry.
What you said was interesting because I was getting ready to ask you about retention and overall in some of these hourly positions, there is a lot of turnover. That's just pretty common. It's the reason people are in these jobs and they want to go and they want to be transient. And there's a lot of reasons for it. And now it seems especially challenging to keep people. So what do you think it is? Like, what is it in that match that's making the people that you place last longer? And what would you consider an average tenure?
So it's interesting because we service all industries, right? So your retail industry is going to they have over 100% attrition rate. It's the nature of the beast. Some of it's seasonal, some of it's it just is retail. Manufacturing is kind of high, not as high. It's going to vary if it's a smaller shop versus an enterprise shop. I mean, there's a lot of things. I think the misconstrued point of view is people presume because they have such a great brand that someone's going to go work there. Now, if you're an hourly employee, people aren't so much going to care about your brand because they're going to care more about their schedule. They're going to care more about their hourly rate, and they're going to care more about their environment. And those are the things that we're seeing. Is there a break room? Do I have adequate breaks? Am I having to take public transportation for an hour to get there? So what's different is we actually have a patent pending matching algorithm. And so if someone applies and they apply for a store 5 minutes down the block from them, but the hours aren't the match for them, well, it doesn't matter how close it is. If the hours don't match, they're going to attrit. But there's another store maybe 10 more minutes down the block that is perfectly matched towards their preferred schedule, which is great for them. That's where we're seeing the retention is sticky because we're getting what they need for their schedule and their family is coinciding with what the employer needs. So you're naturally getting a better fit.
That makes total sense. But my husband is an ophthalmologist and he hires a lot of opticians and techs and front desk people. And he used to have this rule, like if they live further than 30 minutes away, I don't want to hire them because they don't stay. But as things got tighter and tighter and tighter, that it kept moving out. And now I think he has people that are over an hour drive to come in to work at front desk, but they are staying. And we try to pay more, we try to give other benefits, but it is hard to find the exact match that is right for the employer, that is right for the employee, and it's a win for everyone.
The other great thing about our technology, which I really like, is we capture candidate sentiment. So after a candidate interviews, they go in and they get to share what their thoughts were. That has been so critical in helping organizations understand where their gaps are. So we've had one client that had no idea why they were paying so much overtime and they were having a lot of attrition. And what we found out in the market and from the feedback of the candidates is, I really want to work for employer X, but I can only work on the weekends. Well, their employees were working Monday through Friday and weekends for overtime, and they were attriting because they were burning out. So what this employer did is they created a weekend only shift and hired all those candidates that only wanted to work weekends. And it impacted the rest of the employees because they no longer were required to work. And so their retention started to go up. It's so much more than just an automation platform. It's really getting that data, but sharing that back with the client to be thoughtful in the approach of how do they now move their organization to be more profitable and to run more easily, right? And that's where I think our tools are different, is the data. So recruitment automation is great if you're saving time, and it's great if you're taking that time and you're pouring it into other initiatives to make you stronger. But at the end of the day, everything comes back to data, because what gets measured gets done and it gets improved. And so as long as you're doing those things and you're gathering that insight, and where best to get your insight from your own candidates versus them going out to Glassdoor, Indeed, or wherever, and just blasting your brand.
I think what you said there is pretty critical as well, is the client that you're mentioning actually took the data, accepted the data, and made a change based on the data, as opposed to giving it back to an employer who does not want to hear that, oh, well, they don't want to work weekends. This is how we do it. And they have to be open to change. They have to be open to receiving feedback. And I think that that's a very good point, because it made a big, big difference for that client.
Well, we're asking candidates and we're asking employers to do things differently that they're not used to. But if you go back, and I don't want to share your age or my age, but if you go back, I remember when we had phones that were, the rotary dial, and then it went to a wireless big phone that was like this big phone. And it's just, technology has changed. I mean, you've got these candidates that their computer is their phone. They're not going to go log into a computer. They're not going to do all this stuff. So we're asking everyone to embrace and do things differently. Uber was so outside your thought pattern back in the day, right? I remember when there was taxis and Ubers, and Uber made me nervous, and now I will never take a taxi. I feel safer in an Uber. And that was asking us to change and to think differently. And that's what we're doing in this space as well.
And that was a big change, because you grow up being told don't get in cars with strangers and don't interact with people you just meet randomly on the internet. So what is Uber? It comes in business, and there you are, getting in a car with a stranger you met on the internet. It's crazy.
Right. Same thing.
As we kind of start to wrap things up, what one piece of advice, I'm going to ask you, actually, I'm going to give you a double question here. You can answer them separately. What one piece of advice do you have for an employer who is trying to fill positions and genuinely is struggling? Like, they just can't find the right people, or their people aren't staying. So I want you to answer that first. And then what piece of advice do you have for candidates who genuinely want to find the right role?
So for employers that are having struggles finding and keeping talent, I think the biggest thing is to go back and really dig into the data. And if they don't have data, then that's where you stop and you figure out, why don't we have data? Because you should have, this from HR, you should have data on every single person that's applied. But take a look at your job descriptions. Are they truly sharing the day in the life of that role? Are they attractive? Are they punchy? Are they lengthy? Do you need an MBA to read them? Just really make sure that you're taking a look at how you're positioning yourself in the market. Number one. Number two, take a look and make sure, what are your interview questions? How is that being done? You really have to kind of start from scratch and break down. So if you've already got a system where you can go look at the data and understand what your pipeline looks like, where are they coming in from? Are they coming from a job ad? Are they coming from SEO optimization? What types of candidates are you attracting? If they're interviewing being knocked out, just got to go through all of the little details to understand where you're missing the mark. It could be as simple as, we had one client that said the candidate had to be available 24/7, and they were astounded that they couldn't find any candidates. Well, guess what? No one wants to sign up to be a slave for 24/7, even if they're getting paid. So we had to kind of coach them a little bit on that, and they changed it, and obviously it improved. So I think it's just kind of doing an audit of their current systems and seeing if they can identify where the gaps are. If they're still struggling, they're free to reach out to me, and I can connect them with someone to give them a free analysis, or I can take a look at it for them. But the first and last place I'm always going to guide is going to be data.
Excellent. And what about for the candidate?
For the candidate that really wants to find that perfect match, I think they first have to sit with themselves and understand what that perfect match is for them. Like really have a gut check. Is, money the most important? Is hours the most important? Is career mobility the most important? I mean, there was a time in my career where I took a step back to take 2 steps forward. So you just have to understand, what does that look like for that individual person? What is your end goal? And I think once you determine, okay, I want to be a Cynthia. Okay, great. Then where are you today, and what's it going to take you to get there? You need to, XYZ, whatever that is, and map it out. And so now you know the gap between where you are and where you need to go, and where you need to go find allies and coaches and people to say positive things about you when you're not in the room, and just get in those circles and be a sponge and learn and network. The other thing is to take a look at your current employment, each place you've worked at, and identify 3 things that you did at each place you worked. I don't care if you worked at a shoe barn and sold shoes all day. What were the 3 most impactful things you did at Shoe Barn? Did you increase sales by 2%? Did you have perfect attendance? Whatever those top 3 things are at each one of your places that you've worked, and then build on your strengths. Because the top 3 things you did at each role is going to help you build on your strengths to get to where you want to go.
It's very, very good advice. Excellent. And Christy, where would people find you? Do you like for people to reach out? Your links will all be in the show notes and on your article, but do you have a preference? I always like LinkedIn is my playground, so I like people to reach out to me on LinkedIn. But what about you? Where's your preference?
LinkedIn is also my playground. However, I'm one of those obnoxious people that hit the 30,000. So you have to follow me at that point. But yeah, interact, play with me. You can email me directly. I'm Christy Honeycutt at AppyHere.com, but LinkedIn is the easiest way to approach, and happy to help anybody that wants to talk shop. It's my favorite thing to do.
Excellent. Thank you once again, Christy, for sharing your insights on empathy and leadership with us today. Your experience and your expertise is really inspiring. So I'm sure our listeners are going to benefit greatly from this conversation. I appreciate your time and your wisdom. And to our listeners, I hope that you found great value in this conversation today. If you like what you heard and the type of leaders we talked to, just hit subscribe to the YouTube, and you can find the podcast anywhere that podcasts are found. It's the Care to Lead podcast, because remember, leaders who care to lead.